decided to freak the girls out by breaking into a run and leaping off our balcony. His jump included a well-timed twist that allowed him to grab hold of the ledge, where he would dangle for a while until he got the attention he needed. Then he would pull himself up to the gasping relief and accelerated heartbeats of any females who had witnessed it. Our Laurel Canyon house was only 2 stories tall, though. This time Jim was dangling a dozen floors above the unforgiving concrete and honking traffic of 58th Street. And judging from the gratuitous nudity, he was even drunker than usual, so I didn't have much confidence in his grip. We raced across the room to pull him back in. If we hadn't been there, he probably wouldn't have been able to rescue himself. Then again, if we hadn't been there, he probably wouldn't have jumped for the shock value in the first place. Once we pulled him back inside, Jim tackled me onto the bed. While John and Ray secured the window, Jim kept me pinned down as he jokingly writhed around, pretending to put the moves on me. Sure, it was the 60s, but I didn't swing quite that far. I shoved him off the bed and watched him cackle with laughter on the floor. Looking back, I think Jim subconsciously knew that John or Ray would never have put up with his impromptu Greco-Roman seduction act. Jim was always driven to test his limits, and even at his most intoxicated, he was still instinctively aware of exactly what those limits were. That night he saw me as the band member with the best sense of humor, so I was the limit he decided to test. It's funny to me now, but it wasn't funny to me at the time. I was 20 years old, the youngest member of the band. I didn't have any authority over these guys, and I didn't have any understanding of how to cope with this level of chaos. I was constantly being placed at the crossroads between rock and roll stardom and scooping our lead singer's brains off the pavement. We stayed in Jim's room for another hour or so as he calmed down and passed out. The next day, he greeted me as if nothing ever happened. Jim rarely remembered his drunken fits, leaving the rest of us to pick up the pieces. I told him what he'd done, and it was like he was hearing a story about someone else. His reply, as usual, was something like, "Wow, that's terrible," or, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize." His apologies were so simple and yet so hypnotic. I still don't know how he got us to forgive him for half the stuff he did. There was something about his sober nature that made you feel bad about holding a grudge. Hanging from a window ledge, wrestling me naked on his hotel bed, all of it after embarrassing us in front of our producer and waking me up in the middle of the night with prank calls. Why was I putting up with it? How can a simple apology cover it? Why was I sticking with this band when one of its crucial elements seemed bent on destroying everything? All I knew was that I could never walk away. We were still playing small clubs, and we were still unknown to most of the world, but I could already see the future. I knew that Jim could be as big a rock star as anyone who had come before him, and I knew the Doors had the potential to become the biggest group in America. Regardless of whatever else might happen along the way, I was all in. 2 months later, we released a debut album that would prove my instincts right, and that would forever alter the trajectory of our lives. But in the ensuing years, I would repeatedly be reminded of the lesson I learned at the Henry Hudson Hotel. Jim Morrison may not have been God, but he most certainly had the power to throw me right out of this universe. The worst hair in rock and roll. A critic once said I had the worst hair in rock and roll. It stung pretty bad, but I can't say they were wrong. I always battled with my naturally frizzy, kinky Jew-fro, so one day my friend Bill Wolf and I experimented with Ultra Sheen, a hair relaxer marketed mainly to black consumers. The results were remarkable. Wolf, as we all called him, said, "You're starting to look like that jerk Brian McLean," which was the closest he ever came to giving me a compliment. McLean was the guitarist for Love, and his lustrous mop top resembled that of Rolling Stones guitarist Brian Jones. I don't know if I looked as good as McLean or Jones did, but it was a marked improvement over my usual bird's nest. Our hair relaxer experiment happened to occur about a week before Wolf and I auditioned for the Doors. Wolf tried out a few days before I did, and I was surprised he didn't get picked. He was a much more experienced and technical player than I was. We had taken flamenco guitar classes together. We had formed a jug band together. We had played as part of a folk trio together. And we had jammed in an acid rock band with Doors drummer John Densmore together.